Okay, good morning, everyone. We're learning the Maimer Achri Ashem, continuing with this Maimer. Today we'll discuss the last ois of the Maimer, which is ois vav. And we last spoke about the hisbonenus, contemplation, that leads to contemplation in davening, and we mentioned that the revelation of, ultimately the revelation of Havaya, the way it is, higher than the world, right? We have the Shem Havaya, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the way it is in the world, and the way it is higher than the world. And the Rebbe over here quotes the Gemara in Masechta Brachos, Yud Gimel, about the Gemara says, it uses the terminology Amlichte Lamaila, which is crowning Hashem above, down here, Lamato, and the four corners, which this is the Kavanah of the Shema, of Echad. Aluf Shalolim is Aleph, the Zayin is 7, it's really Ches, we have Ches, Zayin Rakim, and the heavens, the 7 firmaments and the heavens, and the four corners of the world. That's the what the Gemara speaks about. Mlichte l'maylo l'mato arba ruches. But the Maimer is telling us that even though when you say Amlichte, crowning Hashem, is meaning that you are referencing to the physical reality. There is a world. There is there's 7 heavens, and there's the firmament. There's the firmaments and the 7 firmaments and the heaven. But there's still something that is above it, which is the revelation of Havaya that is above the world. And that's the concept of that there's no other reality besides Hashem, written in Pashas Vaischanon, Ein Oid Milvadoi, that there is no other Metzius, there's no other existence beside the godly existent, beside Hashem, which is the only true reality. And that was their discussion previously about the different levels of truth. The Sfas Emes Tikon Load, Emes Titin Emes Liyaakov, and Emes La'Amitay, the highest level of truth. So Ein Oid Milvado is referencing to the highest level of truth. We'll look at Vav. U'v'zeh yuvan ma shekosu b'sifri v'peirush u'voisid bakun. So this is speaking about our pasuk Achri Ashem lekechem telechu, which is a pasuk in this week Pasha, in Pashas Re'eh. So we asked the question at the beginning of the Maimer, what is voisid bakun? What does it mean to cleave to Hashem? So the Sifri interpreted voisid bakun that separate yourself from idolatry. For him, the meaning of voisid bakun, what does that mean? How do you cleave to Hashem? By separating yourself from idolatry. So we asked the question, why would you put this commandment at the end? It should be the very beginning. Reishis HaAveda, the first step should be separate yourself from idolatry. Then you can follow Hashem's commandment and do other things. But this is the foundation. So, separate yourself from idolatry and connect to God. So now we see a different definition of what is Avodah Zarah. What is Avodah Zarah? It says anything that is not nullified, not just nullified. The Maimer says, but tachlis habitul, meaning the ultimate nullification. To Hashem, meaning there is Avodah Zarah, there's some kind of there's a trace of idolatry in a place where there's no bitul to godliness. Anything that's not completely nullified to godliness, there's something there's a trace of Avodah Zarah in there. Still Avodah Zarah. And this is the meaning of the verse. follow Hashem your God, walk in His ways, and then the pasuk ends off. The pasuk concludes uvoisid bakun, and you should cleave to Him. And the Sifri tells us, separate yourself from idolatry and connect to God. After the avodah, meaning that you served Hashem, you followed the steps, followed Hashem's ways, doing His commandments, learning His Torah, and so on. The completion of, meaning the final blow, the final touch, the completion of the job, so to speak, the way you become complete in Hashem's service. You have to separate yourself from avodah zarah. What does it mean, separate yourself from avodah zarah? In a very fine way. Simon al uveisid bakun. The sign uveisid bakun aprishus me'avodah zarah is to separate yourself from avodah zarah. To be in the ultimate nullification. That it should be noticeable that there's nothing but Hashem. And this type of feeling, this type of realization, needs to be in a way that you see it. That what does it mean you see it? That you have clarity. As it says in the beginning of the parsha, you should see Anochi. Since the way we serve Hashem is we serve Hashem with steps. We start with the lowest level and we progress, God willing. As the Torah describes the steps in prayer, sulam mutzav out, so that there is a ladder below, and you climb the ladder, you go up. When it comes to Parshas Eikev, we're dealing with Shmiya, with hearing. When we get to Parshas Re'eh, we're dealing with Re'iyah, with a higher level. Re'eh Anochi, as we mentioned before, that Ein Odem is Shmiya L'Re'iyah, that hearing and seeing is two different levels. Shmiya has a certain level of clarity, but hearing is one level of clarity, but seeing is a much higher level of clarity. V'ashleimus b'zeh, and the completion, Tiyeh le'osid lavoi, will be in the time of Mashiach. She'azi ha'gilui v'chinas riyah. At that time, revelation of godliness in the world will be in a way of seeing, of riyah. They'll be able to see godliness. They'll have clarity. V'zeu gam k'mashukosu v'anechi bochu klol. Pasha says, "V'anechi nes v'nechem," putting in front of you bracha, a blessing, and a curse. Ki mitzad v'chinas hanechi shalmal miseder ishtalshelus. Comes to hanechi, the essence of alikus, that is above ishtalshelus, above any kind of order, a gradual order. שנמשך מבחינת ראייה, נהפך אז גם הכלול לבוכו. This is beautiful. So we see, when it comes to, if you notice that this week Parasha speaks about the level of Anochi. We're not saying Re'eh Hashem. It says Re'eh Anochi. What does Anochi represent? Represent the levels that are above Ishtashelus. What's so important with these levels? How do they relate to us? He says in these levels, Hashem can take the klala, takes a curse, he takes darkness and transforms it into light. He takes the klala and transforms it into bracha. That will be in the time of Mashiach, because of the revelation of the unity of Hashem. Meaning it will be revealed in the world, the unity of Hashem that is above any kind of definitions. It will be in a state of seeing. Kosov in the prophecy of Yeshaya, in regards to the revelation of godliness in the time of Mashiach, it says, "V'nigla kvoid avaya," Hashem's honor will be revealed. V'ro cholbaso, and all flesh will be able to see. Inen ariyah, ine kuyam. At that time, the fulfillment of the prophecy in Zephaniah, that all the nations of the world will transform, will turn around. That's what I mean. There will be a transformation to be Ovdei Hashem. They serve Hashem. Shchem Echad, meaning together with us. So this is similar to the transformation of turning a klala into bracha, turning darkness, turning a curse into a blessing. Similarly with the Ovdei Avodah Zarah, with idolaters, there'll be a transformation in them as well, that they would serve Hashem. Shchem Echad. But how is it going to happen? It's to happen through the revelation of Anochi. So now we can understand why the pasuk ends off Uvoisid Bochum. So what the Rabbi is really saying, you had a very interesting interpretation of the Sifri, because the Sifri, instead of I would say siding with the simple meaning of the verse, it tells you something that's sounds completely out of the park. Because the word says Uvoisid Bochum, when you should cleave to Hashem, right? That's what Tidboik means. Like David, glue. Should connect to Hashem. Pasuk goes on and on with all the commandments, and so Uvoisid Bochum comes the Sifri and says, no. Uvoisid Bochum means you should separate yourself from Avodah Zarah. So, okay, if that's so, well, it should have been written in the beginning. That's the number one thing that you got to do. No, meaning in this pasuk there's like 5 commandments, right? Yeah. The list goes on like this. It says, it's a pasuk in chapter 13, verse 5. So it says, it says, you should fear God. You should fear God. Chapter 13, verse 5. Yeah, I'm getting it. Meaning you should fear Hashem, you should guard His commandments. You should heed to His voice. And you should serve Him. And then the pasuk ends off, after all these steps, asking us to do all these steps, the pasuk tells you, Uvoisid Bochum, and then you cleave to Hashem. So you have 5 commandments over here in one pasuk. I give you a basic directive, Achri Avaya, right? Follow Hashem, and then what does the pasuk says? Oisa Siro, you should fear Hashem. Mitzvos of Tishmoru, you should guard His mitzvahs. Bekoilo Tishmo, heed His voice. Voisa Savoidu, and then Uvoisid Bochum. At the end of it, you should cleave to Hashem. You didn't see it?
Yeah, I see it, but okay, but Rashi. I'm looking at Rashi. He says to adhere to His ways, to cleave to His ways, to do kindly actions, bury the dead, visit the sick, and as did the Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Right. So comes the Sifri, and it comes up with a whole different interpretation to the word of Uvoisid Bochum.
Right. That's the last word.
So instead, Chassidus doesn't tell us this pirush, this interpretation, that the Uvoisid Bochum means to stay away from Avodah Zarah. Chassidus doesn't tell you this is an off pirush. It says it has to be something deeper into it. What's deep into this interpretation? Yeah. So he says, the complete way of serving Hashem is being completely nullified to Him. If you're not completely nullified to Hashem, there's a trace of Avodah Zarah there.
So, okay, my personal, when I look at this, I think that if you do the first 4 things, then you can adhere to His ways.
Right. And then he tells you, that's what the point of the Maimon. He tells you when you do all the 5 steps, then you can reach to the level of separating yourself completely from idolatry. Because idolatry is not necessarily just bowing to an idol, God forbid. He's saying that there is a trace of idolatry. There's still some sort of avodah zarah at the place of a place where there is ego, a place where there's no bittul. A place of bittul, complete bittul, tachlis bittul. He writes, complete nullification. That's the final blow. That's the final step that needs to be done in serving Hashem. Meaning, you can do all the beautiful things in the world. You can do the mitzvahs. You can learn Torah, but if there is a trace of I in it, there's still avodah zarah there. So comes the Sifri, tells you, do you want to really connect to Hashem? You really want to tap to Avaya, to Anechi? You want to tap into these levels? You have to be in a state of bittul. You have to do uvoisid bakun. You have to get rid of any traces of avodah zarah, and you can't do it unless you went through all the steps. Meaning, you can't get rid of the coarse of the fine, thin layer of foreskin until you got rid of the coarse foreskin, right?
Right.
So it really, the reason why uvoisid bakun comes at the end, that's really the answer of the Maimer to the question that started in the beginning of the Maimer, is that you can only get there after you went through all the steps, and then you have to make sure that everything you're doing, or everything that is being done, is done in a state of bittul. Why am I doing it? Because ein od milvado. There's no other existence but Hashem. There's no other reality but Hashem. But it takes avodah, it takes work. Otherwise, you would say, well, uvoisid bakun needs to be in the beginning, because how can I serve Hashem if I'm still connected, God forbid, to avodah zarah, to idolatry? He says no. A Jew is obviously not connected to avodah zarah, but there is a trace of it. If there is there's a trace of it, and that's really why it comes at the end. That's the polishing, so to speak. If you like a carpenter that polishes it 100 times, and then he puts a shellac, and he puts this, and then a final touch, and not to make it really shiny and beautiful, to make your actions beautiful, and our Torah and our way of life, is to ultimately get to a state of bittul. That's what from my understanding, that's what the Maimer's message is. Bochum to you.